In this last principle we have spoken of, from the near to the far, there is a powerful implication. If I want to teach you something you don't like, say I used to hate biology. Teacher says, let's study biology. I say, no thanks. What do you want to study? I love computers, I love electronics. That is my temperament. Teacher says, fine, let's study electronics. That's near to me. Biology is far. So I will start by studying what the child finds close to him. But then the skillful teacher says, do you know which is the most powerful computer in the world? Your brain. If we had to make a computer that powerful, it would be as big as the moon. Imagine if you can understand how the brain works and make a computer that powerful, what a great contribution it will be to the world. So you're evoking from the heart the sense of higher ideals or even heroism of doing something for society. But what am I doing? I'm talking to him through the window of computers of biology, brain. So we study the brain and how it works using the terminology of computers. But your brain is not limited to your skull. It extends down into the spine. It's all continuation of your brain. And through the spine, it extends down into your arms to your fingers. The nervous system is just an extension of the brain. You can't understand how the brain works unless you know how the nerves function and how the nerves get information, how they send out orders for the fingers. When I lift a glass, there are 1 million operations going around to perfect precision. We are talking of robotics. How would you design the perfect body and the brains controlling it? The child thinks he is studying computers, but I am teaching him biology. Any subject can be taught through the window of any other subject. Start from the near, get to the far through the window of one subject. And there is no limit on this, because all knowledge essentially is one. You can flow from anything to anything. You may have to work a little to find the link, but there is always a link. Be sure of that. So from the near to the far is a very powerful tool, as you will see. Well, with these three principles of education, we take up the challenge of transmitting knowledge, the principle of air. But remember, these three principles are so powerful together. Any problem in education that you face, any question, any challenge, turn back to these three. And you will find here a hint of how to resolve that problem. Keep these in mind. These are sutras. You know what is a sutra? Our ancients enjoyed this very much. They would take a whole vast body of knowledge and condense it into some essential truth. And then they would tell you, here is this essence, dwell on it. By dwelling on it, you would get back all that body of knowledge. These three are sutras. The whole education can be understood in its application through these three. There are two special techniques I want to elaborate, which derive from what we have discussed so far, and which relate to how the brain functions. Remember, if the mind is not consulted in its growth, the mind cannot function too well. You must know how the brain learns. Then you can rearrange the content of your presentation that the brain absorbs spontaneously. So how does the brain learn? The very interesting knowledge which we have today acquired through studying the brains working through MRI scans, but which confirms what our traditions always spoke of. The first thing we realize is that the brain is not comfortable with studying in bits. When we observe the MRI scan, the brain takes information that you are studying, it puts it in the temporary memory for a while, temporary, and then after I have stopped studying, I go out and play in the garden. The brain now takes up what is in temporary memory, rearranges it and puts it in permanent memory during the time when I am playing in the garden. But if instead of playing in the garden, I finished my class and started learning something else, the new learning goes and replaces the old learning in the temporary memory, never giving it a chance to go into the permanent memory. And all that I learnt earlier is erased. What a huge waste of time. How much struggle, how much pain to achieve so little result. Imagine if we could understand this brain's working and sequence our subjects accordingly. So what does the brain want to do? It wants a gap in between. It wants a gap of play in which it is not learning new things, where the temporary memory can be reorganized and put in permanent memory. This phase we call assimilation. First there's a learning absorption, second phase assimilation. But there's a third phase. Watch what happens when a child has learned something interesting in school. First thing, he's excited about it. He comes home and tells you, "Mummy, you know what we did in school today?" And repeats all that he has learned. So the third phase, which the brain instinctively wants, is re-expression. In your own words, as your experience. Absorption, assimilation, re-expression. 3 steps by which the brain learns. If you follow the 3 steps, the brain has got it as an experience in permanent memory. If you skip a step, you lose what you have learned. How shall we put this in practice in a classroom? Because after all, our time is structured period-wise. How did they do it in the past? And then we'll see how we'll do it in the future. In the past, they understood this very well, and they would take up a single subject for a whole day, so that the assimilation automatically takes place at night, even allowing for time in between. Or they would take up a single subject for a whole week, sometimes in extreme cases for a whole month. Then drop that whole subject entirely, go to the next subject. By then you've gone through the process, 3-step process many hundred times of everything you've learned. It's all deep, deep, deep. Today's teaching in snippets, alternating subjects, is the cause, in fact, of the fickleness of the mind. The modern mind has this one special feature. It's extremely fickle. It can't hold attention for too long. Compare ourselves with our grandfathers, grandparents generally. You find they could hold attention and extend it for a long time. We have lost that capacity because we don't hold attention for more than a period. If you go to a public function, if you're a speaker there, you ask, "How long should I speak?" They'll say 40 minutes. Beyond that, people get restless. Why? You know, all our life as students, we have learned to pay attention for 40 minutes only. So now as an adult, the internal school bell rings, bling, 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 40 minutes ho gaye. Change of class, why is the speaker still talking? That's how it works. We have only trained the minds to pay attention for that short time. And the earlier system of training a single subject for a whole day or a month developed the power of concentration to that extreme. I can hold attention as long as needed. Observe what a child does instinctively during exam preparation. Where you have allowed him free time, now the brain functions instinctively the way it wants. What does he do? I take up one subject and study for 3 hours. Then I throw away the books. "Mummy, I'm sick of it. I'm going out and playing. I can't take it anymore." I go through that cycle. I come back and then I revise again. Isn't it what you do? 2-3 hours at a time. That's what the brain wants. How will we do it in class? There are several ways you can approach. One is limiting yourself to a single period. Within the period, I will go through the 3 steps. So we will study something. Now we stop studying and allow assimilation time. During assimilation, I will tell the students, don't further study the rest of it. Just go over what we have discussed. Think about it. Dwell on it. Make notes. Be quiet, that's all. Don't talk. You want to sit, close your eyes, daydream, that's also fine. You want to sit and chant something quietly, fine. But after this 5 minutes, I am going to ask you to present to me what you have understood. So prepare for that. That's the assimilation. At the end of those 5-10 minutes, I'll tell, now you tell me in your own words. The problem with that is they will just try to mug up in the 5 minutes and vomit it back. We don't want that. We want them to say what they have understood. So I'll give them a special dimension. I'll say, you tell me what was the most interesting thing that you liked here. So now they're not interested in mugging up what was interesting for me. Or you tell me how you would present it better. Or a third person, I say, what new ideas can you add to what has been discussed? So I try to bring in an element of creativity, innovation, independent thought, and let them freely speak. I encourage them. I don't mind if they don't cover all that we have discussed. But say it in your own words as your experience. So in a single period, I may bring these 3 steps. Unfortunately, the typical 40-minute period is not enough. I would even recommend, if you can, within your school or within your subject, organize 2 periods at a time. Instead of doing mathematics 6 periods in a week, 1 period a day, we can do mathematics 2 periods at a time, 3 times a week. It's still the same duration of the week. So timetable wise, there's no problem. But you restructure the timetable to put 2 periods at a time. That gives you more time, a little over almost 1.5 hours. We can go through the 3-step process. Not once, if needed, twice, if there's a lot of content in a day. But generally you can do it once. And bring a 4th step of some creative, innovative dimension also to make the class even more interesting. There's still a 3rd way of dealing with it, which is a way by which we trick the brain. You see, at the end of the day, how does the brain decide that a new subject is started? I'm teaching maths, now I start teaching languages. How does the brain know it's a new subject and it overrides the old? It has to do with the sense of the content. So we are going to fool the brain. The whole of today, the first 4 periods, we are going to talk to the brain about trees. Only in the first period, which is geography class, we will talk of trees as the theme through geography. In the second period, which is my language class, I'm going to talk about trees as a language study. The third period is mathematics. All the examples are from trees, branches, growth, etc. formats. So the brain thinks it's a one continuous class of trees. And you do your subjects in your own way. So setting a theme over several subjects. Some coordination between teachers is needed, but it's tremendously powerful. The end result of that day, the child goes back saturated with trees. Oh, I'm sick of trees. My brain is numb with trees. Good. Because now his brain filled with it is continuously churning internally and does the assimilation process. If you have of course sequenced internally within a class also 3 stages, fine. But nevertheless, this is one class I had. Nothing overwritten, all held there. This is a very powerful technique. Immersion in learning. Sustaining a state of concentration for a duration. Often after our workshops, we've had parents, teachers coming to us and saying, my child can't concentrate. What can I do to improve his concentration? So this is one of the fallacies we have as teachers and parents. We say he can't do something. So I have to break through the fallacy. I ask, why do you say he can't concentrate? Well, when he's studying, he only studies for 15 minutes and then starts getting distracted. So I say, how long is he distracted? About 5 minutes. He comes to me, he eats something or whatever. Then what does he do? Then he goes back to his studies. He is not incapable. The brain's requirement of the period of assimilation is what causes him to take a break. It's normal, it's necessary. Except his attention span today is of 15 minutes, which is fine. If you allow this process and consciously nourish it, even explaining to the child the importance of taking breaks for assimilation and means of assimilating, then gradually the 15-minute period will become longer and longer. You will still need assimilation, maybe even longer assimilation. But your attention span will increase by following what he's already doing. There's nothing wrong with your child. It's normal.